Don't get comfortable.
Mm.
I'm never comfortable. And I thrive in that space. And when you get comfortable, your relationships go to shit, your career, everything. If you're comfortable, you're probably not learning. That doesn't mean that you can't be happy where you're at, but happy is different than comfortable.
Hmm.
And as soon as I feel comfortable, I know that I need to work harder. I need to work harder. And I'm not doing something I need to be doing. And when I reflect, I'm not. And I'm missing the boat. I'm dragging on certain things that I need to be doing, and I course correct. But don't be comfortable. That means we're not doing what we're here to do, what we're designed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Claudette, and I'm the founder of Baby Got Background. So I'm a private investigator and a relationship coach who helps people stop picking partners who belong on Dateline.
So, all right. So I just want to make sure. So Dateline, that I think that's a show, right? Okay. And I'm assuming it's a show about maybe partners who aren't the best pick. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right. So, all right. So at what point, this is kind of a weird thing, man. I've never thought about this before. At what point do like when you say they stop picking the wrong partners, at what point is that sort of understood in your line of work? I mean, is it just because I imagine if they're coming to you, it's not just that it's not a good fit, whatever. I mean, if there's, the investigative stuff, has got to be something else going on there. So how does that work?
It's a two-part thing. When they discover the background check, that's usually somebody who's starting to date somebody. They're starting to get to know them, and they're like, "Oh, something seems a little off, but I'm not sure." Or they can be proactive and say, "Hey, I really like this person. I really want to dive into this. I want to know about them." And what we don't do today is understand more about the person we're interested in, which is from a background perspective. So we pull background checks for when we buy a car, when we buy a house, all these things. But with our own love life, people that are going to be around our family, our children, ourselves, like we do nothing to protect it. So the background check is the one piece that gives you more of the facts, the data, the part that is undeniable, and the other part of the picking not so great person is that's an inside job. So it's a two-part thing. So you can
Hmm.
get a million background checks on every person you talk to, but if you're not fixing the part of you that picks those people, then you're
Mm,
not really moving anywhere. So it's mixing the intelligence piece with like the intuition that really creates that holistic, like, why am I doing this?
yeah, man. Okay, that's really interesting because I didn't realize that that was part of the equation. But I do realize that. I just didn't realize that's what we were going to talk about here. But I'm glad to hear that though, because as far as the internal stuff, because I feel like that's really to a certain degree that's like the only part you can't control.
Hmm.
And there's I've said this before on the podcast, but I really love it. Is that like people say intimate relationships are a mirror for yourself,
Hmm.
and if you meet the same person over and over, then maybe the problem isn't that person, maybe it's something going on internally with you. And I think, but what I think here in this context specifically, choosing those people, not that it's just like the same things bother you or the same things trigger you, or you have the same issues from a relationship to relationship, but like choosing that specific person over and over, I think is a big should be a big sort of red flag for yourself.
Yes, it is, because we attract people who's familiar to us. So whether it's drama, whether it's chaos, whether
Mm,
it's, you know, just like I have a friend specifically he picks the absolute worst partners, and he's like, "Why can't I get this right?" I'm like, "You have to do the work. You have to do the
hmm.
work." And he just keeps picking that person and that person and that person over and over and over. It doesn't matter what they look like, they're the same person. And it's a reflection of a lot of unhealed parts of himself. And it's
Right.
going to take a lot of work. And I told him, even if you find that dream person that you imagine who has her shit together, she's amazing, she's does all the things you want her to do, what does she get in return?
Mm,
You? Well, I wouldn't want that. And
right.
so that was like an eye-opening thing for him to hear, because I know that for myself, I wouldn't want that in a relationship. I don't want to fix that kind of shit. You know what I mean? If I'm in
Right.
a partnership, like if I've done the work, I expect that person to do the same. And I think that's where people miss that, is they're constantly expecting so much from the other person. I want a person that does all this stuff. Well, what are you bringing to the table as well?
Hmm. Do you get into attachment styles at all? Anxious, avoidant, all that stuff? Does that kind of incorporate in with your work?
I try to, what I look at most is a lot like, I do focus on like trauma responses,
Hmm.
like how people respond to stuff. Like you'll have somebody, I think that's really important to understand, because you'll have someone
For
who
sure.
says, I just don't understand why every time I try to talk to him, he freezes. He just doesn't communicate. And people chalk
Hmm.
that up to poor communication, and they don't know how to communicate and they just freeze. Well, the trauma responses allow you to understand why they're responding that way, and how
Hmm.
we can tread a little bit more carefully and more conscious, how we approach somebody. When you really understand why somebody behaves a certain way, it almost breaks your heart. It doesn't offend
Right.
you, you know,
Yeah.
because you're like, oh my gosh, like, my husband, for example, we've done a lot of in, almost 10 years, I had to learn a lot about that. And it was really, it required a lot of patience on my part, because I was that person that was like, why doesn't he communicate? Why doesn't he say what he wants to say? And learning those trauma responses really helped create a completely different dynamic between two people. And it really wasn't about communication necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think I focus more on that, than anything.
Well, and like that's a really good point though, because I think a lot, and I don't know, I would love to sit down and talk to a psychologist and figure out why it is that intimate relationships are such a, like, I don't want to say explosive, but like such a energized area for this kind of trauma response. Like, why is it not, you know, business interactions? Because I feel like I understand the emotional aspect of it, but like I feel like a lot of people have a lot of stakes in their business. You know, why is it the person can have their professional life is just like great, and then their intimate life they have all these, like, trauma responses or whatever. I would just love to know, like, the like psychologically, like what the differences are. Um, but that's a good point though, because like a lot of this stuff, when you talk about anxious, avoidant, and all this stuff, it is different trauma responses. And I think the extremes of both of those styles are obviously, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to be with someone who's operating in that state. But like, so for the most of the people in that space, it's like if you're really trying to understand your partner and they're trying to understand you, assuming it's a two-way street, um, I don't know that there's a better definition of love than that. I mean, if you're trying to like understand your partner and why, if you do certain things or say certain things a certain way, it makes them, feel this way or whatever. I think that's like that's actually a beautiful thing, I feel like.
It is, and it's really, it's not an easy place to get to, but it's about understanding, where you want to be, and it
Hmm.
takes a mutual, ongoing effort to do that. But back to what you said is, prior to this, was understanding the difference. How can people have their business and professional life, but not their personal? If you think about it, how we're raised, especially men, they're taught to suck it up. You're the provider,
Hmm.
you're the person that's, bringing, you're paying the bills, you're the strong person, you have to do all these things. So it's a lot easier for men to thrive in that space, because that's where they
Hmm.
were taught to. They were not taught to cry, have feelings, be vulnerable, all that kind of stuff. So that's
Hmm.
why there's a big difference in what their upbringing, because they weren't taught to do the other stuff. They're taught
Yeah.
to show, to show a certain person that is strong, that is capable, and, can't be broken down, and so that's the difference. But,
Hmm.
going back to the other thing that you mentioned, like a really beautiful place for a couple to be is, I feel like I talk to couples who've been together for like 20 years, and they think, oh, we've been together for 20 years. That means nothing if you're not like setting those milestones. Like, for example, at 10 years, I told my husband, like, what are the next 5 years going to look like? Like, that's something that we're mapping out right now. We have to like intentionally figure out what that looks like. What does it look like to, like, for example, I'm the person that's, I'm like, we need to do this. I have a list of things that we need to do. And that makes him crazy, so we have to do it in a way. I have, back to the trauma response, I have to say, like, hey, like when he first wakes up in the morning, I can't just dump the whole list on him. And
Hmm.
I've learned that I have to give him some time to come around so he doesn't feel pounced on. And but that's been a dynamic of him understanding me understanding him, and then planning out those milestones. The 10-year, I think 5 years is a good place to sort of map out, like, where do we want to be in a year? Where do we want to be in a few months? Like, you know what I mean? Especially with
Hmm.
us having businesses and stuff, but also personally, like, I think therapy is the best gift people can give each other as a couple. You hear all the time, if you're not growing together, you're not going to stay together. And I believe that you can't have one person growing and the other one not. Oh, I've had a lot of trauma, but you didn't. That has nothing to do with it. You're really
Hmm.
going through this together. And what does that look like? How can you love that person? Ask them how can I best support you? How can I best love you? In order to understand that, you got to go through the shit together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I do agree with that. I think there's a lot of people who see it as you mentioned, like therapy or some sort of outside, like a coach or something, some sort of outside uh, help, for lack of a better word. I think people see that as like, well, if you need that, the relationship's not meant to be, or whatever. But like when
Yeah.
you're in these sort of trauma response reactions, man, sometimes you just need a third party who's like neutral, who's like looking at it objectively to just kind of break that cycle.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about yourself and like the planning and all that, and it kind of reminds me of me because I feel like my response, I feel like, to maybe agitation or anxiety or whatever about anything, business, whatever, is to like do things. It's to like either make the plan or figure out the solution or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
which could be, especially in an intimate relationship, could be like the exact opposite to do if there's space that's needed. Sometimes,
Exactly.
which is, sometimes it's uncomfortable for me to just like let that argument or problem or thing linger around, because I'm like, well, we are supposed to do something to fix it, but sometimes that is a solution.
You're actually speaking my language. That is the big thing for me, is I'm a problem solver. Like, you
Right.
can't bring me anything that I'm not going to solve.
Hmm.
And the first immediate reaction I have is to fix it. And I told, we had to get to that understanding. He said, not all the time do I want an answer to the problem. And so we had to get to an understanding that I'm not offering this to be controlling. I'm offering it out of from a place of love. I want to help you. I don't want you to suffer. I don't want you to be in pain. And so understanding where it comes from is where we came to that understanding, of being
Yeah.
able to say, okay, I understand. And he'll say that I'm not looking for a solution right now. Just hear me out. And
Hmm.
that's a good signal for me to, oh, okay. And then I switch gears because, like I said, by default, I'm ready to solve. I'm
Right.
ready to problem solve. I'm ready to fix. I'm ready to save the world. So I switch to listening mode, which is not always comfortable, but I'm getting better at it. And
Hmm.
then going into that place.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about understanding your partner, because I feel like people who kind of look at this the way you and I do, who are the problem solvers, the doers, like that's what makes us, I don't know, maybe feel at ease about the situation. Like it could really be the complete opposite if the person, sees it as they need more time to process it or the space or whatever. And I think that it's just the beauty of it is like understanding that like, hey, whatever this makes me feel, if I'm not solving the problem, this person feels the exact same thing, just in an opposite direction, in a different form than what I feel. So I think that understanding and finding that mutual ground, that what however it works for both parties, I think is really again the beauty of it. Um, but so when you're working with people, and you said relationship coach, so these people, like, you're working with them as a couple, or like one of the two people, or
I've niched down in terms of my coaching to work with only men. Not that I
okay,
won't work with women or couples, but I'm really focusing on on men right now.
okay,
Um, and I feel like the I had a wonderful mentor, Daryl Stinson, he's a TED Talk coach. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I call him my North Star, but he really helped me reach a point to understand the area that I wanted to focus in. That was really just a really good place for me to be, is working with men. And I figure, what's the best gift you can give women is a healed man.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so like with the men that you work with, I'm assuming maybe they come to you after they've already lost an important relationship, or maybe the relationship is on the verge of being lost, or I don't know, maybe they feel like they can't find the right person. Maybe it sounds like that's kind of combined with this. So what's a common, I guess, situation that you find these guys in when they come to you?
Most men won't come to you because
Okay.
they're not, um, if they come to you, just organically, it's because they're like checking a box, you know.
Mm,
She gave me an ultimatum. If I don't get help, I'm screwed.
right.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So I've lately, and it's strange how God and the universe works, but strangely, the people that have come to me, or that the situation presents itself, is very unexpected. So it's been on a
Mm,
plane, catching a plane ride. It's been talking. I One of my favorite places is New York, and I love going to New York by myself because I love going to like the places, where I sit at the bar and I meet people. So most of the people I coach are people I've met just in conversation. They didn't even weren't looking for somebody. They knew deep down that would be something they really need to do and want to do.
mhm,
They wouldn't even know the first step. And I think that's been the biggest thing right now working with men is they don't know the first step. They know they need to, they know they want to, they have a desire to do this work, but who do they like, how do they find somebody? Do they just start Googling? You know what I mean? They just don't really
right.
understand the first step. And so, like I said, the universe has worked very interestingly in a very interesting way. And just, it's been in person, like me just, and I haven't really expanded outside of that because I'm just really leaning into like how I found people, how they found me. And I'm
Mhm.
just really like letting that take its course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. And the reason I asked that, I was going to ask, so like, what with these guys who maybe are having these issues with the relationship, or maybe the relationship's falling apart, or already has, is there like a sort of a commonality between like what they have going on internally? Because we were talking about earlier, we were talking about trauma responses and how a lot of men were sort of raised to think that, just suck it up type thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a combination of all these different things. Um, but like, I think you made a good point that they don't probably aren't going to come to you just voluntarily. They're being either pushed or checking a box or whatever, which definitely 100% makes sense. So, what do you think? Like, what is it that's going on with them internally? Is it some sort of like maybe they're unaware of an attachment style they have, whether that's anxious or avoidant, or I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating.
Yeah. Um, I th- a lot. So it starts off them saying, you know, my wife says I can't communicate. My wife says, all I want is sex. My wife says, if I don't fix this, that we don't connect, I'm out. So, like I said, it starts off by them checking a box, but as we work through this, we find out, like, again, back to the point where men are told not to, suck it up, be this, be that. They're also taught the only time to be vulnerable is through intimacy. I don't want to even say intimacy. I want to say just sex, like just pure transactional sex, nothing, not even
Right.
intimacy. And so their wives feel like they don't feel that connection. And what most men also don't understand is the foreplay and all the stuff that works for a woman happens throughout the day. If
Right.
you don't take out the trash, if you don't if you don't do the things that are matter to her, by the end of the day, the last thing she wants to do is be intimate with you. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So if she asked you to hang up a picture and you did it and you did all these things, she's like, "Ooh, I kind of can't wait till later on." So
Right.
they don't know that, throughout the day, like, "Hey, thinking about you, I'm missing you." all that stuff matters. And they didn't think about that. They were like, gosh, I didn't even think that I just thought I'd get to it, in a month. And I didn't think that she really cared about that. And I'm like, yeah, she's building resentment as you're not hanging shit or throwing out the trash. She's building resentment. And so just making those connections for them are really eye opening. They really weren't aware. Also, talking about the trauma response, as we mentioned, um, they, it really helped them understand why they respond that way.
Mm,
When someone freezes, like you could be yelling at them, or a wife can, all women can be crazy, but when they're talking and saying something and they just freeze, they can't even respond. It helped them understand that. So while the surface layer of, I'm coming to you because my wife, things aren't working out, we're not connecting, and if I don't get help, she doesn't, I'm out. That gets removed completely, and we do more inner work with them. And it's really, I'm a huge fan of working with more coaches. You talked about earlier about like psychologists. I think that's really important work, and that's, I think, a little bit more for some intense stuff. Like if somebody has real deep trauma, it's something that I can't work on. They're going to have to go to an actual therapist. But to do body work and to really get inside the, what's the connection with your body, what you're missing there, that's really where, I feel like coaches come in, because we take the clinical out, you know what I mean? When we get to the point where we can actually discuss what's going on inside your body, like your intuition, how you're feeling, how you're connecting with others, that's a whole other work that isn't clinical. And I think that's the part that many miss most. And once men find that, it's like they become alive. They just, their work changes, their connection with their partner changes. Some of them say, you know what, I this marriage has been dead for 20 years. I want out. Like, I don't even care if she kicks me out at this point. I don't even know who I was for all this time. I just
right.
kept doing what she wanted me to do, because that's what I was raised to do. My parents stayed together for 50 years, so I thought I had to do the same. And I realized that she's not even what I want. And they do that too. Not everything fixes the marriage. Sometimes once you fix you, then kind of the rest falls into place. But it's a lot of self-discovery. It's a lot of them uncovering things that they didn't know existed.
Hmm. Yeah, I would imagine, and this is on either side, whether it's the man or the woman who's in, therapy or coaching or whatever. I would imagine that a decent portion of these relationships do not last because, like you mentioned earlier, if one person's growing and the other person is not, if one person's in therapy, and I'm not, it could be that just maybe that one person is the one that needs it. But if there's not some sort of mutual improvement or progression, I would imagine that there is a decent portion of those relationships that this don't last. Um, but that would be assuming that that portion is mutual partner, the both partners need it, which isn't always the case, and I understand that too. Uh, I imagine it's like it's probably very. I think it's probably very difficult to like maybe talk to men in this setting, with the not wanting to open up about their emotions or whatever. I feel like it would be irritating to try to talk to most men in this situation, like because I don't know. I think you're right. I think that that being in that vulnerable space, um, is what is not well. Maybe it's definitely not easy for a lot of men. It's not something that's attractive to them. It's not something that they're just going to go out and do willingly. So,
Mm.
but it's like also too. You mentioned the growth aspect of it and the self realization and all that stuff. Like you have to be able to be open to that. You know what I mean? Like you have to just be open to at least exploring that part of yourself, Um, so yeah, I don't know. This makes me think about too that like business coaches who work with entrepreneurs, that's like some of the hardest people to work with because by definition they go against the grain, they do their own thing. And so it's almost like I feel like maybe it's not a fair comparison, but it's almost like those people, like you said, have to be something has to be motivating them to work with you. Whether that's the law, the business is on the verge of being lost or relationship, whatever it is.
I think there's a shift. I think there's a shift in men wanting to. Um, I think the the world is making it a little bit more welcoming for men to come in differently. And so I feel like they're very, what I find most is they're curious. They're
Mm,
curious. They're not sold. They're not dead set on they need this, but they're very curious. And I think that's where I make the connection. And ironically, most of my best friends are all men. So naturally, I've just been able to, my whole life, just connect easier with men on a friendship level. And it's been very, like when I am working with these men, yeah, we dig deep, but and it's hasn't been too hard to get them to do that. And I don't, something about what I'm doing is working. That's why I don't want to change it. But yeah, um, I think there's a shift in how we are making it more welcoming for men to be more vulnerable. And I think just everybody in general, I think a lot of people are starting to hear, like, learn more about themselves, and they're doing their own way of healing. And some of it's scrolling through Instagram, which is not, I get quotes all the time. People send me these quotes, and I'm just like, instead of scrolling on Instagram, you probably like need to put this into action. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So I think people are finding their own different ways of healing. But I think there's more of a curiosity among men and women to learn more, even though they don't have the framework or what that looks like. They're staying curious to see what they find out.
Hmm. Yeah, man. There's so many different routes we could take this part of this conversation. Um, Before we do that, I do want to get back to the selective part of it, the investigative like stuff. So now that I know that you work with men, is that part pretty much anybody, or is that mostly women? Because I feel like women would be more prone to that, like trying to find out more about their partner, just because. Um, well, I don't know. I'll let you answer that question. Like, what do you think? Is that like a mix?
What I find a lot is the women, so the more mature, like I'd say 40 plus, this is a concept of them. They're entering that second part of life. Their kids are probably grown or close to it, and they're entering that second part of life. They're starting to date. They have no idea what to expect. And so for them pulling a background check, this is like a blessing for them. They're just like,
Mm,
I didn't even know such thing existed. And they're like, I'm going to tell everybody about it. You get the under 40, 20s. It's insane because they will date anything and everything, but to pull a background check, they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to do that." I'm like, what? They trust these random men,
mm-hmm.
but they don't trust the process. They don't look at this as a process. They feel it's intrusive. They feel, why would I do that? And back to like kind of some things you said before is, why, you said something, about that would be love if two people could really figure this out. Well, imagine what type of understanding, what it would look like if dating changed entirely, where you're going into a relationship where you know all the shit about each other, good, bad,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That change, like that's love too. That's connection as well. That's transparency. That's you being able to ask questions and really dive in to the person you're investing all this time in. So, I feel, and then men are just like, once they understand that it exists, then they process it a little bit, and then they pick the right person to pull it with. You know what I mean? They do a little bit more of a process of like, I'm not just going to pick it on anybody, because they're a little more selective, I feel, in
Mm-hmm.
general. Generally speaking, they're a little bit more selective of who they spend time with or who they invest their time with, so they'll pick a certain person that has sort of met that 3-month criteria, let's say. And women are making a little bit more of like irrational decisions. They're not quite sure. They'll so one person will do a background on somebody they met for coffee. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like there's no process to it. They're just blah. But I've seen the men be a little bit more selective of what, and the older women, 40 and over, are look at this as a tool.
You know what's interesting about this, man? You were talking about people in their 20s, and I think you said this is mostly women, but it's like I think that mystery of meeting a new person, I think that's part of the like seductive quality. You know, like you. I mean, I think that if you meet a person and you know you like them, you're attracted to them, whatever. I think that sort of I don't know, just that sense of mystery around them is I think for a lot of people is part of the attraction process. And I don't,
Absolutely.
and I mean I don't know what the you know it's not like if you pull a background check you're going to know like you're going to fully know the person and their personality. I guess it's not like that. But you mentioned that the people in their 20s are a little bit more turned off to the idea, and I can imagine I can see
Yeah.
why. Like I can see that.
Well, so we would ideally one would want to pick a background check when it's like around the 3 months because
Mm,
we're a private investigator firm. We're not going to if you people say I can pull a background check online. No, you can't. Not the kind we do.
mm,
Ours is more comprehensive. You have to be a licensed private investigator to pull the background checks that we do. So it's far more accurate and comprehensive. The ones online are pure data sourced garbage. So like funny, I pulled one. There was a team that I'm working with that does background checks, but they're for dating, but it's not the same. It's pure data source. And I'm like a prostitute in Minnesota. So that did obviously wasn't accurate. I wasn't a prostitute, sadly enough. But anyway, so it's not accurate. Okay. So
mhm,
this is more of a tool when they've been to when you're I think 3 months is a good time to say, I've spent time with this person. I can understand some of the behavior patterns and I feel like I'm ready to keep going. And I think that's the thing there. The second thing is we're in a swipe culture. So when you're swiping left, right, whatever, there's zero dialogue. You're not getting to know these people at all. So, oh, I have a Tinder date tonight. Like, who the heck has a Tinder date tonight? The person comes over, like, that's not an ideal time to pull a background check. You want to wait
right.
more 3 months, but nothing wrong with meeting somebody on Tinder. Just saying the ideal state is probably around 3 months. And that's where like I said, it's a two-part thing. The intuition part has to take care of the under 3 months.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I can see that. And I feel like if you, I don't know. I guess maybe if you make it to the 3 month mark, there's probably a lot of I would say green flags for lack of a better word. I
Mhm.
feel like personally, I mean, I don't. I think if it makes it that long, then you are actually attracted to the person, and it's not just the mystery, not just the initial the initial stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know this. I didn't know this was a thing for relationships either. I mean, I think there's like apps out there where people like there's these Facebook pages or whatever. Are we dating the same guy pages and stuff? Like I thought that was the extent of it. I just thought that's where it stopped.
Yes, I'm actually really grateful for those groups. They're not only informative but extremely entertaining. It's
Mm,
funny, my daughter, I told her about the group, and keep in mind, I spend zero time l- looking at garbage. I don't watch the
right.
news. But this I do. In this Facebook group, I was telling my daughter, I said, "You have to see the comments. Like, this stuff is insane." And
Hmm.
so I invited her to the group, and she actually got in trouble with her husband. He's like, "Get the hell off your phone." She's like, "But this is like, you couldn't put it down." So those groups, Are We Dating the Same Guy, are informative, but also really entertaining. What I do appreciate about them is I love how both men and women come together and say like, yeah, I did date him and there were some things that seemed off. I think that's helpful to hear from someone else. Also, if I've seen a guy was on there, and this poor daughter, she was like, that's my dad. So that was really sad to see that. But I think but look at, you have to, that can't be your source of truth. I think it's a resource, but it can't be your source of truth. I think it's informative, but it can't be your source of truth. And I had a friend on the women's side. She was devastated, and she called me. She's like, "You have to help me figure how to take this down." And I'm like, "You can't. It's there." And everything these guys wrote was not even true, not even close to being true. And so you can't use it as a source of truth, but it is a tool. It is a resource. it is informative. But I think, like I said, as you keep, what you said, the green flags, as you continue to see a series of green flags where you want to move forward, then I think that's a good time to launch the background check.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with those those kind of Facebook groups, man, there's always going to be, that percentage that it's just an ex who was like not happy that the relationship ended, who's the source of all this, and the extremes of this kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily disprove the credit of everything else that's in there, but those kind of things do exist out there. So um, I don't know, just I guess like you said, just kind of it's a resource, but it's not the source. I think that's a good way to put it. Um,
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about like the men's, and I talk a lot about like men's self improvement and men's sort of growth, personal growth on this podcast because I myself am a man. That's my experience in life, and so I think especially these days, there's a lot of young men who maybe like there's either like maybe they feel lost. They don't have like a sense of purpose, which I think is very big, very important for men. Um, and I say this, and sometimes it gets misunderstood and misconstrued, but I think that a man's purpose in his life should be his number one thing. I think, chasing women should not be the number one thing, which, for a lot of men in their 20s, that is the number one thing. But I think that whatever your purpose is as a man should be your number one thing. And I think a lot of guys these days, especially young men, they just don't have that. They don't have that. And so, they're lost. They find it in other ways. If you hear, I've talked to many people on the podcast who have had and overcome, thankfully, addictions. And you hear people talk about like, well, an addiction, one way it really starts is that lost, like you're lost and you're looking for something. And the beauty of that is a lot of people, I was talking to a guy, Rory Launder. He talked about how his crack cocaine addiction, one way he got out of that was to find a purpose in something else. And that for him was helping people who were in that similar situation. So, I mean, it's a really powerful thing. Um, and I've talked a lot about this too, like men in the relationships, it doesn't seem like they're showing up maybe the way they should. Some of them, not all of them. But, I don't know if you hear this in your work, but like, there's women out there who think that like, where are all the men, where are the men at these days, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I feel like finding that purpose as a man is really important. But is that something that you sort of guide them to? Do you see benefit in that for them? Like finding if they don't have a purpose, if they don't have something, a career they're working towards or something, or do you just focus on like the trauma response stuff like we've been talking about?
Oh no, it's all encompassing. I like the person I was telling you about earlier. One of the things that I said is I look at life as a house. Are you a house that needs fixing up? You need new this, new that. Would you buy you if you put a for sale sign today? Would you say turnkey, completely ready, no work needed? Done all the work, spent years doing all this work, it is ready? Or would you say, it isn't turnkey, it needs this, it needs like all kinds of stuff? I said, who puts a house for sale like that? Very rare, unless, buy as is, which most
Hmm.
people, unless you're an investor, don't really want to do that. And when you put it like that, people are like, oh gosh, like they almost like back away and say, oh wow, I would not put myself, I would not put a for sale sign on my house. I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? Where are you in your job? Well, I'm going to school for what? What are you going to school for? Well, I'm just taking my prereqs. Yeah, but for what? I ask those hard questions, but for what? If you're going to go to school for underwater basket weaving, does that do anything for you? No, have a plan. What are you going to do? I want a psychology degree. And do what? What are you going to do with that? Well, I would like to work with kids. Okay, where? Where do you want to work? With what kids? What do you want to? So people are so used to giving surface level responses. Nobody, it doesn't get any further than that, right? So I talk about, they come to me. I have a lot of, everybody has depression, anxiety. And I said, if I wasn't doing shit, I'd be depressed and have anxiety as well. So I really have to dig deep, say some harsh things to them. They think it's harsh at first and then they get it after a while, but you have to ask the very, the hard questions. What are you doing in your job? If you're not happy there, well, you're not going to be happy over here either, right? But it starts from like what you said is purpose. What is your purpose? And I heard something this last weekend that really like was just really powerful for me. And I think if the more we do this, the more we can see this kind of thing turn around. But you are most qualified to help the person you used to be. So if we
Mhm.
look at our own path that we've had, I mean, I was a single mother. I've been divorced. I was a small business person. I didn't know how I was going to pay the lights. Like I went through a lot of different things in my life, which ignited the crazy entrepreneur that I am. But I am most qualified to help the people that I used to be. So when I hear women or men saying like, I'm just not sure what I want to do, then I start the questions. I start digging deep. So aside from like the trauma response and like where somebody is in their life, I dig deep and I help them uncover that purpose, which is what I had mentioned my mentor, one of my mentors, Daryl did for me. I had no idea I would ever work with men in a million years. And I'm helping the person I'm most qualified to help the person I used to be. So I'm a person who had a dad that wasn't present in my early part of my life and is today. And in talking with him, I learned so much about why he wasn't. And it fits the same criteria that we're talking about. He was raised not to do these things, not to be vulnerable, not to be that dad that took care, was there for his daughters and this kind of stuff. And so how can I best help people is to help other men and women figure out what that looks like, So yes, purpose arrives in the form of your job. As a parent, not everybody has to have children. That question always drives me nuts. Women, when I'll talk to women, they're like, well, it's time for me to have kids. It's time for you to have kids. What the hell does that mean? It's time for you to have kids. Well, my age, do you want kids? Well, I mean, I've thought about, okay, do you want kids? Do you have somebody to have kids with? So, like, getting away from these social norms, which have been that mask that we've been talking about of women have to be, you know, married by this age, pregnant and kids and, all that. Then they have no career but taking care of their kids forever. Men have to do all these. So, getting rid of that and just digging deep and finding out what the heck people want to do. My friend Daryl, he asked me about 100 questions before I got to the point where I decided I uncovered that working with men was my purpose. And I do think there's also this theme, like once people have done the work, once they've discovered their purpose, they also feel like I don't need anybody. I'm good by myself. And then you find people isolating and not finding partner, but that is also not the design. The design is we get better with people. I'm not saying go out and find a partner just to find a partner, but we get better with people. Think about it. When you're having an argument with somebody and you come out of that argument, hey, it really bothered me that you took it this way, that you said this, you said that. You learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about the other person through an argument. You ain't going to argue with yourself. There's not a lot you can or uncover with yourself. So that's where people, the power of people come in and the power of connection to help you learn and grow through those. So as people heal, they kind of get it in this place where I don't need anybody. Well, that's not true. You do need people. That's up to you to decide at what capacity, but we need people to thrive. We need people to learn and grow and love. How are you going to figure out what we know what heartache looks like because we've had our heart broken. We know what love looks like because we've been loved, we've felt love. That wasn't just by ourselves. That's with people. So really holistically bringing together the part of us that the part of us that needs to heal, the part of us that needs purpose, and then the other part that needs people.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that, man. And I like sometimes the conversation will come up about like how to, especially like for these younger men, uh, like how to get the right woman or find the right woman. And the answer that I always had to that is, if you want to improve with women, improve yourself, like improve all these aspects of yourself. Because like, I'm 32. So I remember when I was like 22, 20, 23, whatever. And it's like, that was like, you thought that, you have a nice t-shirt or you're dressed well. And I'm not saying like being groomed is definitely important, but it's like, if you follow this aspect of yourself, man, and you improve yourself and you follow this path for yourself, you will be able to find the right woman, I feel like. Because even if like, if you have the best, if you think that like everything that you think that these young men think a woman is looking for, if you have all these things and you don't have this thing for yourself, you're missing a very big piece of this. Especially for men. I can't speak for women on this. I mean, I do know what men prefer in most women, but if you improve yourself, I feel like that's the best way to improve with women. And when we say that, when we say like that, there's a man who is like he's driven, he's on his purpose, he knows what he's doing here on this earth. It's easy to look at that and see that as selfish, but I can guarantee you, man, if there's a guy who's working that hard on his life, on himself, a big piece of that is so that he can one day have that family, so he can one day have that woman, have that wife, have that children. That's what he, if he intends. So it's like, it can be a motivator, but it shouldn't be like that. I don't think that should be the ultimate goal for a lot of these young guys, which I think it is in some cases. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you improve yourself, I think if you start with yourself, everything else really almost falls in line falls in place by itself. The women, the business, the money, the health, everything. If you just start with you, because it has to. Because what other way would it be? Like how else would you do it? There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And the friend that I referenced that picks the worst women in the world, you know, he's so eager to find this partner. And I'm like, are you trying to find a partner that you're going to split the bill with, or are you going to find a partner that you can buy her dinner? Are you at that place right now? He's like, well, no. I'm like, that's not a her problem. That's a you. My point was
Right.
saying your ideal woman here, your ideal woman who's strong and ambitious and has her shit together and all this other stuff. You don't. What does she get with you? And that's the part that people like back away and they're like, oh, wow. Oh, yikes. I'm like, can you buy her dinner? Can you make sure she never pays for dinner or lunch or breakfast for the rest of your life? Well, why would I do that? That's the problem. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a huge fan of, I'm still like I don't want to say a gender role person, but I do believe that I think when people first meet or whatever, yeah, whatever, you split the bill, whatever that looks like. I don't know. But I do feel like I coach my men, like take care, be a man that takes care of your woman. And I tell women the same thing. Be a woman that takes care of your man. There's a lot of things that go with that as well. But like if you're this dude who's like scrounging up $50 so you can take a girl out so you can split the bill, like are you really creating a catch for her? Probably not. And if you're a woman who's just showing up to get your drinks paid for, are you really creating a catch for him? No.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I think a lot of the guys who can, I gotta be I gotta be careful with this one. A lot of the guys who are at a place where they can do what you're talking about for this woman. If there is a woman who's there to just get her drinks bought, you can usually, read that pretty well, and they're not. I don't think a lot of those people are going to tolerate, that. Um, but I mean, I see what you're saying. The gender roles. I think that's something that we've, for whatever reason, has been like blurred or lost, or maybe even that a lot of people feel that if they do sort of one of the original, I don't want to say original, but like the gender roles that we've always had for a long time, if somebody has that sort of style in their relationship, it's like for some reason a bad thing. And it's like, well, I don't understand why that's the case, but I do. What I will say about that is, like, if that doesn't work for you, then that's not the person for you. Because if that person doesn't feel comfortable with that, like if that man doesn't feel comfortable being a provider for you, or if he feels like you, whatever he might feel in that situation, I don't know, then you're not going to force somebody. Like, you can't force somebody to be that. If a woman's not receptive to you, like being a provider for her and being there for her, if she sees it um as degrading, or she's you're trying to say that she's not capable of it or whatever, you're not going to change that person's mind. I feel like, I mean, that's something that's like, I don't know why that's the case or where that comes from, but the point is that it's not going to work for you, but there are people who that works for, like that sort of dynamic in the relationship works for, and that's going to be a better fit for them. But yeah, I don't know. And I think this is kind of like a chicken and egg problem. We don't know, who knows? We don't know if it's because like the men stopped being men and now the women feel like they have to step up and be the men. We don't know why it happened the way it happened. All we know is there's like a divide between like, there's people who still sort of believe in the gender roles and people who sort of see it differently. And I think that the best thing we can do, we as just like the human race, is just like let those people, whoever's going to be with each other, just let that be their style of person, basically. I mean, you're not going to change everybody's mind.
Yeah, definitely. And the more people heal and like think they've gotten to a place where they know themselves, they feel like they have to have that, like you said, divide. Like they can't, if I'm going to be somebody who's healed and I'm independent, that means you can do your own stuff. I don't,
Mm.
I'm not going to do that for you. And that's the part that just drives me nuts. And I
Yeah.
don't coach to that. I do not coach that. I had somebody, she was like, my husband's furious because he comes home and the house is a disaster. And I'm like, are you working right now? She's like, no. And I said, what are you doing? I stay home with my kids. Okay. Do your kid, are they in school? Well, yeah, they go to school from these hours. I said, well, then what the hell are you doing? I said,
Hmm.
I'd be pissed if I'm out working and I come home and the house looks like shit. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not saying you're a maid. I'm saying you're not working right now and your kids are at school. So, wouldn't you want to create an environment where your husband come like when you walk in your home, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? And you turn it in a way where she's like, when my husband comes home, I want him to feel happy that he's home, that he's with his family, that we're gonna have dinner together, that he doesn't have to worry about his job for till tomorrow. I want him to feel this way. And I'm like, so what does that look like? How do you help him feel that way? Well, I could probably clean the house. I could figure out what to make for dinner. I could, helping her figure out how to co-create this environment. So when her husband
Hmm.
comes home, she's really creating what she desires, right? Which is her husband to come home and to feel all those things. And same thing with him. Like, how do you want your woman, your wife to feel, your girlfriend, whatever? How do you want her to feel in this instant, whether it be, her coming home or whether it be her working or whether her having a weekend? Like, what do you want her to feel like? And they create that and figure out how to co-create that with that person. So it's not feeling like, the old school gender role of like, you're meant to do this, you're meant to do that, and really getting out of that. And it's like, hey, this is your home. You get to decide. You have the power to decide what you want this to look like for you and your partner, period.
Hmm.
And when you put it that way, then they start to like, wow, they start to be innovative and they start to like even redecorate their home and redecorate their room because they want to create a certain vibe. And it just, really getting them to feel to figure out what that feels like, what how they want their partner to feel, just changes that. It breaks that dynamic. You still get that, I don't want to say maybe gender role is not the best way, but you still get that same, how can I love you? How can I support you? How can I be this partner that creates an environment where I am still doing things that take care of you and you're doing things that take care of me? Like
Hmm.
my husband, I tell him I want to cook, and I'm sure he's a great cook. In 10 years, he was never cooked. I think one time. But that's important to me. Like if I
Hmm.
can't cook for him, and I even tell him he's so busy all the time, and sometimes he'll, he we'll go out to dinner or something, and I tell him I want to tomorrow. I don't want to go out to dinner. I want to cook, and you need to. He's that guy that like, hey, what do you want to eat? I don't know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it drives me nuts. 10 years, he still says the same damn thing. And I'm like, do you understand when I cook for you, it makes me feel happy. I want to do
Hmm.
this for and having those conversations, and then it makes him think, he went and bought a grill and he's like, okay, we're going to start cooking on Sundays. And it got him really excited because I included him in that process of why it's important to me and why I want to do that. Really having those conversations. We are notorious, people in general are notorious for having conversations in our head. I'm going to punish you
Mm.
for all the things you did last week, but I'm not going to to tell you. I'm going to expect you to know what that is. And I think we spent several years in that space before we knew better. And now it's completely different. Like I said,
Mhm.
I'll say, I want to do this because this makes me feel happy. It makes me feel happy to do this for my husband. And he's like, oh, okay, well, oh, then I'll do that. And he does the same thing. So it's, it's really creating what you want your home to look like and feel like as you walk in the door from beginning to end and
Yeah.
being that place. It's so hard for us to travel, even though we travel a lot for work and stuff. It's so hard for us to travel because we love so much what our home looks like when we walk
Mm.
in the door. It's so hard to leave, really. People are like, let's go here. We're like, no, we just want to be in our home. Like we have co-created that environment where we have very strong gender roles, but we created what that looks like.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And I think for a lot of men, like with that, on that path with that personality, I think being able to provide and protect for that woman, that is a form, that is how they show that person love, and I think the ability to do that is like, I've said before on the podcast, but it's like, there's not really many things that you can compare to like just the presence of a woman who's like really feminine, that really cares about you, that you really care about. It's like when men say, you hear a lot of men say like, well, I want my home or my family or her to be my peace. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to argue, but it's like it's just a sense of peace around that person, like that you don't get, especially, a lot of men who are on that path, who had that personality, they're out in the world like fighting battles that they never really tell her about, and then she's just like, it's crazy to explain because you can't really explain it, but it's just like a sense of like just peace and joy just being around her. You know what I mean? And I think that's where I think when we say peace, I mean, I don't think that anybody wants to argue, but we just automatically assume that means like no arguments. You know what I mean? No, I mean, tell me about your day. Tell me what's going on. I don't know. It's just, it's a really unique sort of feeling, I guess. But, uh,
Well,
but yeah, the balance.
if you think about it, men are always expected to act a certain way because if they say something wrong, she's out. Like my friend said, I see her back more than I do her face because she's always out the door. So
Mm,
they're scared to have conversations. So building a life with a woman who is that sense of peace, but also that sense of safety. Like I can tell you that I'm really upset about this and you're not going to run. You're not going to judge me. You're not going to make me feel like I'm not strong enough to handle something. I can tell you that, you know, I'm, I don't want to, you know, I want to quit my job and do something else because I know you're going to be that woman that's going to help me figure it out. You're going to help me figure out what my purpose is. Like, so it's a sense of safety, it's a sense of peace, um, in somebody being able to be that person that just says it all and knows that they're going to be okay. And that person's not leaving. They're not going to walk away. They're not going to abandon you. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to make you feel that you're not the strong person you feel you are. So I think safety is also a huge, huge, huge component too.
mm, yeah. And I think that comes in different forms, for men and women, the safety and the security aspect of it, for sure. But I mean, I could definitely see, but I guess the thing is like the balance of, like if there's people who are on, like the man who is looking for this kind of woman, the woman who's looking for this kind of man, I think the balance of that is like in my experience, it's been a really like beautiful relationship because, I've talked to people who, maybe we were not aligned in that way and it just wasn't a really good fit. But then, like we said earlier, there are people who maybe see things differently than I do, men who see things differently than I do, that would be a better fit for a person in that sort of mindset. Um, but I mean, I think, like going back again, I think that we should allow ourselves to be on that path for that person. I mean, there's a lot of like these days, there's a lot of, well, you should or should not look for this kind of person. These typical gender roles, you should or should not follow that. I mean, it's just like, why can't we just let people, and I guess this would be a question to close out your episode. Why can't we just let people find the person who's the fit for them? Like why do we have to sort of, like you said earlier, like fit in these boxes and go to these like societal expectations? Why can't we just look for the person who we feel like we're going to align with and just go with that. I mean, because there's so many different people on the planet, man, and to think that like we have to fit into a box of like what we should like what that relationship how it's going to work for us for we as two people, how our relationship's going to work together when it's like really the bottom line of it is just like such a unique thing, you know, like I don't think there's a blueprint for like what we should do, you know, for a successful relationship. I think it should be between the two people.
Yeah, I don't think that I think that people go out less, right? So they're not at like, do you want to find your dream girl at a bar? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but are you
Hmm.
like at what point do you are you the old guy in the bar or the old girl in the bar? You know what I mean? So there's lots there's less opportunity, I feel, for people to make a really good connection. That's why I'm a huge fan. While the backgrounds, I think, is that 3 month thing and really important. I also think that dating apps, paid ones, like you're gonna get what you pay for. That's just
Hmm.
the bottom line. If there are avenues for people to meet others that perhaps align, or at least the opportunity to see if you do or not. And I think that we're not in libraries, we're not in restaurants, we're not in bars, we're not out strolling the park and Mrs. Wonderful is going to come out. We don't have a lot of environment other than swipe right, swipe left to really understand, is this person going to be a good fit? So we're kind of like stripped of a lot of those opportunities. So the thing that comes up for me is, how do we create those opportunities? Are you networking? Are you putting yourself around other people? Are you getting apps that you do pay for and you get to see kind of what's out there? Stay curious, right? It's I had somebody say the other day, I would never get on a dating app. I said, why? And she couldn't even answer the question, because the why was just that stigma of, dating apps are awful, we shouldn't do that. But I said, but why? And she didn't answer. And I said, we obviously had a conversation about it, but like creating more opportunities where you're able to be around people, the natural process of what that connection looks like, all that other stuff will come. And the other thing that I see is people give up too easy. Well, I just didn't like the fact that, I don't know, he didn't text me back right away.
Mm.
What does he do for a living? Well, he's a scientist. This is an exact actual example. He goes into this like locked facility for the whole day. So you're not going to talk to the guy because he is prohibited from using his phone with his
Hmm.
important job. I don't know. Is that something we should not talk to this guy for? No. But see, they give up so easily.
Hmm.
He didn't text back. He didn't invite me out the first day. He didn't do this. We didn't have sex within the first week. Oh my gosh. That's the other part. So you can put yourself around all the people. But if you're giving up so quickly and not giving other people the opportunity, while also looking at yourself, is is a problem, so there's so many different pieces to this. But I think staying curious, putting yourself around others, because you need, like I said, you need the connection to thrive, and fixing yourself while also looking for that person is all key. And pulling a background.
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
background checks, just because somebody has something on their background doesn't mean they're a piece of crap. I have somebody who was like, I wouldn't know if I don't know if I'd want to settle down with somebody who had a perfect record. He's like, that freaks me out. And I can understand that. Now, of course, it wasn't like attempted murder or something, but he was like, when she was younger, she did some shit. He's like, I like that. It built character, it built trust. She told me about it actually before I pulled a background check. So I think it's a dynamic, right? And that's where the intuition comes with the intelligence, and combining those two to really change how we date, change how we get in relationships, change how we stick in there, not give up easily. And how do we co-create that space that we want to keep forever?
Yeah. Listen, man, this has been a great conversation. I do have to leave, unfortunately. I'm sure we could keep going. Do you have a like a website or a social media or anything you want to promote while you're here?
Definitely, Instagram. Baby Got Background Checks is our Instagram. So I'm incorporating a lot of my coaching strategies through there. So we'll start doing that soon. But I am creating content around red flags and what we can do. So without levering too much of the coaching piece, I am leveraging a little bit more of like the part of us that needs to pick better partners. So that will also be coming along in terms of content with the background checks.
Okay. And if you want to send me any links, I can post any links you have with the description. Um,
Okay.
one last thing I ask, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it could be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, maybe something that, a client or something. What do you think is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
Don't get comfortable.
Hmm.
I'm never comfortable. And I'm I thrive in that space. And when you get comfortable, your relationships go to shit, your career, everything. If you're comfortable, you're probably not learning. That doesn't mean that you can't be happy where you're at, but happy is different than comfortable.
Hmm.
And as soon as I feel comfortable, I know that I need to work harder. I need to work harder. And I'm not doing something I need to be doing. And when I reflect, I'm not. And I'm missing the boat. I'm dragging on certain things that I need to be doing, and I course correct, but don't be comfortable. That means we're not doing what we're here to do, what we're designed to do.
Yeah. And I think, the beauty of that is like what we are here to do is not going to be comfortable. Like as we're doing that thing, as we're, beginning that process. I hear people a lot, for the longest time, there's been this like follow your passion, follow your dreams. And like, if it's something you're meant to do, it's supposed to be, uh, I guess maybe easy, but I feel like some of the most important things that we do in our lives are going to be the hardest, especially initially.
Very.
Um, I think there's going to be a lot of resistance there. There's going to be a lot, whether that's external or internal. We don't believe in ourselves, or there's obstacles outside, whatever it is. But it's like if you look at any person who's done anything great, and it doesn't have to be a famous person, whoever's done something great for themselves, it's like there was that at least in the beginning, but probably throughout the whole process, it was not easy to start, to finish, to continue. You know, um, I don't know. I think we've just been fed, made to believe this lie that if it's our dream and if it's truly meant for us, it's going to be easy. But it's like, no, man, it's probably going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You know, and I think that comfort, I think having that comfortable job sort of in place of pursuing that dream, I think that makes us feel like we're being productive, especially like we're talking a lot about family and providing and stuff like that. I think if we can have that safe, comfortable job, it makes us feel like we're doing the right thing. But like at the end of the day, if the cost of that is like your ultimate self and who you're truly supposed to be, what you're truly supposed to be here for, because only you can bring that. Like there's
Yeah.
different people who can do things similar to you. Like there's, job titles that are the same job title as you, but like you are the only person, you're the only you that's ever been here. You're the only you that's ever going to be here. And so if you don't maximize that, like the world's never going to see that. And so like you are the only one who can bring that to a reality.
And what separates that what separates us from others, right? And there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong. Like my friend dynamic has changed significantly. I don't have a lot of the friends I used to have because I've changed.
Hmm.
And so I surrounded myself by people who were smarter than me, better than me, harder working than me, sacrifice more than me. And it has been life changing. And that doesn't mean I don't still care about other people. That doesn't mean I'm better than them. It just means you're at this level where you're comfortable, you're happy, you're going to the lake every weekend and you're on a boat. I'm not. I'm at
Hmm.
a different, my priorities are different. My sacrifices are pretty pretty hard, and I don't get to have a lot of those times, but I'm shooting for something different. So how do we separate ourselves from others? And not all of us are meant to be at 100% and doing all these crazy fun entrepreneur stuff, and that's okay. We can't all do it, but I am, and
Hmm.
that's where I don't get comfortable. And that's if somebody's really working too hard towards something, that is my best advice. If you're comfortable and you're at peace and you love what you're doing, that is perfectly fine for you.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're anything like me, you probably feel the best, the most comfort, the best feeling when you are growing and trying to do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The best thing I
So.
heard one time was somebody kept telling me I needed to slow down, I need to have more balance. And I said, for me, rest is stress. Doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well,
very
listen,
peaceful for me.
yeah, well, it is. It's like it's I don't know, man. It's a weird thing to try to explain, but it's like if you're trying to grow and you're trying to do these things, like, yeah, the outcome is like great, the rewards, the salaries or the incomes, whatever it is. But it's like a big part of that for me is like the process of it. It's like the process of growing, like getting those clients, making those sales. Like, this, what do they say? The climb is worth the view. It's like the process. Something I say all the time is like that the journey is the prize. Like
Yes,
the journey of whatever you're doing is the prize of the thing, and then the income or the result is just the you know, uh, a bonus, I guess you could say. But
absolutely.
but yeah, it's been great talking to you, man. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain to you how I upload all this stuff. But I appreciate it today.
Thank you, Cody, so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy.